The only thing on the, by phone.
She will change it, so we'll make a motion to amend. Do you want to make that motion?
Sure.
Just so she's
Yep,
not compelled to. Oops, sorry.
One, two, three, four, five.
Let's get started. It's 4:30, so. Sean, we're good? Just give me, are we live? Yeah, you're good. Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order the August Jail Oversight Board meeting. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the first item on the agenda, as always, is public comment on agenda items. So if there's anyone from the public who would like to address the Jail Oversight Board with anything on the agenda, now is your time. All right, hearing none. The next item is an approval of the July minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
I would just raise that I believe the minutes should reflect that Judge Brennan was on the meeting by telephone. Other than that, I make a motion to approve
Okay,
with
and
that correction.
I'll second, and I guess if you want to make a motion to amend the,
Motion to amend the minutes to reflect that Judge Brennan was in attendance by telephone.
I second that.
there's a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on the motion to amend? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. And Shelley, do we need to actually do another vote on the amended?
Yes.
Okay, so with the now amended minutes, is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make that motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right, the next item is an approval of the reports of July. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
I'll
Your
second.
Honor? Thanks, Brian. Motion and a second. Questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next item is the staffing penalties. Warden Tatum.
Good evening, everyone. Staffing penalties for July 2021, $177,902.90. And that is up over $5,000, about $5,400 from last month. The significant increases in departments would be a plus $7,000 from security services, $2,000 in records management, and $2,000 in health services. So altogether, it's $11,000 bump in those three departments that drove us this month, or last month.
Thank you, Warden. Any questions for the Warden?
Have any of those positions since been filled, or at least positions accepted to be filled?
We've lost staffing. All right, our overall staffing at this point is 84%, and our effective staffing rate is 79%. Now, if you recall, last month it was 88% overall and 77% effective. We've actually gone up 2% with an effective in the effective category, which is good. Right? That just means that we have fewer people out on leave of some sort. So we actually have more people at work but fewer people overall on the rosters.
Okay, so positions are being filled, yet there are medical leave or family leave, there are leaves that are making it go to the
Yes,
negative.
yes.
Thank you.
Right. That, I think the leaves reduced from 57 to 27 in July. So we only had 20 people in that status of 27 people in that status, some sort of leave status, versus 57 prior to that.
Warden, we understand that staffing is a challenge in basically all industries right now, and certainly within the jail and prison industry. You know, it's occurring at other local jails and prisons. With that said, are you aware of what GEO is currently doing to try to bring more people in?
Aside from recruiting, they did establish an employee referral program, which is good for up to $3,000, depending on how long the referral sticks with the company. So if you refer someone, they come in, they get hired, and they last through probation, that's $1,000. 6 months is $2,000. If they're an entire year, that could add up to $3,000. So $1,000 at each point for a total of 3. So that is one initiative. I know that Rebecca Johnson is working fiendishly over in Human Resources Recruiting. So the efforts are high, and you know, we're not doing as good as some, but better than a lot of others. So.
Any other questions for the warden? All right, is there a motion to accept the staffing penalties for July?
I make a motion to accept the staffing penalties for July.
Thanks, Deb. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Controller Phillips. Motion a second. Questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Warden, the coronavirus update.
Yes, sir. So in July 2021, we had 109 inmates tested, 0 new infections, and we had no new infections reported among staff members, which is the first month that's happened since the pandemic began. So, having said that, I have a sneaking feeling this is a lagging indicator like I believed before. And so with this Delta variant being present, you know, my tendency would be to go back, to revert back to our more conservative procedures and protocols for COVID, but, you know, it's kind of hard to go back when you have 0 infections. So we're going to keep an eye on it, you know, and, you know, we're going to have a hair trigger on reverting back if we have to.
What is our current vaccination rate amongst the population?
We are at 33%. We dropped 6.5%. So
Because of people leaving the
Yes.
prison who had been vaccinated?
Yes. We actually had 569 commitments last month. Of those 569 commitments, 178 had previously been vaccinated before they came to us. So that number is climbing ever so gradually, which is a good thing. But our effective rate in the institution is 33%. We don't think that's nearly good enough. So what we're doing is we're establishing COVID registration teams, vaccination registration teams. So we're going to have multiple teams and model what we did when we did our voter registration drive last year. It was very effective. So we're going to have case managers. They're going to be trained by myself and others. They're going to be teams of 3 or 4 people. They're going to go out to the classrooms on the different blocks throughout the institution, and they're going to bring individuals from the blocks to the classroom, which is a better environment to teach people, a better environment to inform them of what the vaccine can do for them. So we're going to take smaller groups, educate them, and then we're going to do registrations right there. And we're going to have targeted goals. So we want to get up to over 50% and sustain that until such time as that number of people coming in the back door becomes ever increasing, you know. So we move from 178 to 200 to 300, so forth and so on. So it's going to be a perpetual thing. We know we can't take our thumb off of it. So that's our plan.
Yeah, I share your concern about the vaccination rate going down, as you've said, and with Delta variant really going in a wrong direction amongst the community. Frankly, I'm stunned that 0 out of 100 and, what did you say? How many tests?
109.
I mean, that just kind of almost defies the odds.
Well, the month before was 111, only one new infection, right? So I think that this trend is going to take a U-turn here.
And this is for the month of July?
July.
Okay, well, that actually isn't too surprising, because in July, our positivity rate within the county was less than 1%.
Right.
As we sit here today, it's 4.5%. So I think your instincts are right that when we look at August, we're probably not going to see such favorable lack of positives. I share your concern. I also hear you that it's hard to really, as we sit here right this very moment, change back to quarter tiering. But
Right.
I would welcome the moment that you're seeing
Right.
the slightest hint that we're starting to see some positives, not waiting around for next month's meeting, but
Absolutely.
immediately letting the Jail Oversight Board know, and so we can address it.
We've had those discussions.
What are we doing to regularly encourage the unvaccinated who either are new to the prison or have been there and now see a lot of their colleagues having received the vaccination 2 months ago and are
Right.
still doing totally fine?
Right.
Re-encouraging them.
Well, what we did, if you recall, I guess a couple meetings ago, Mr. King had made a suggestion about an incentive program, outside food, if you recall that. And we took that to heart, and we actually had another clinic where we did get pizza from the outside community, and we got a few more people to participate that way. It's going to be a combination of things, though. I mean, we're sending out memorandums, written by the facility administrator, sending them out to all of the inmate population, telling them where we are, what our protocols currently are, what could happen if we slip backwards as sort of a motivator, So, we're doing everything we can to communicate, but we're going to go now even further to bring them out into the classrooms and speak to them. Because when you go into the blocks, I've tried that before, and you sort of get hecklers, out of the community. They don't believe what's going on and the conspiracies. So if we get them in smaller groups, we get fewer hecklers and hopefully more agreement.
And perhaps with kind of the carrot and stick approach, that
Yes.
the carrots being pizza or whatever, and perhaps, as a lot of other organizations are doing, for those who aren't vaccinated, there's more regular testing. There's, things that are more onerous because of the fact that they are a greater risk of spreading COVID within the prison.
Well, what I'm been considering, sir, is at some point, if it gets, hopefully it doesn't, but if it, we get a significant number of people who've been vaccinated, and as opposed to going back to those draconian rules we had before with movement, we might start moving people based on their vaccination status and operating that way. This side of the institution, quarter tier, this side of the institution, you're open. So we've been considering things of that nature to this point.
I think that's a worthwhile consideration. I've been monopolizing the conversation. Any other?
I just have a question. With the county going so quickly to that 5%, is there a number in your head that percentage-wise that you think you ought to become more restrictive if the positivity rate, it's so low now,
Right.
but look how quickly overall county came with, I think, a higher percentage of vaccinated than your population.
Sure.
So is there a number in your head that once it hits that, you're going to become more restrictive?
Well, I think that, we're not waiting for a monthly report. I'm talking to the Health Services Administrator weekly to this point. I think maybe we have, in this month, one infection, but if we get a couple back to back, I'm thinking at that point, we're going to start locking down until we make a movement or an organized move for all of the inmates to one side of the institution or the other. That's my sort of vision.
Warden, are we continuing to this point what we were doing earlier with new entrants into the jail being kept in specific?
Yes, we're still doing that.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, look, I would say that I think we should have, I really feel like we're at an inflection point right now,
Yes.
and we have to make sure that what we do in the next few weeks, I think they're going to have a major impact on maintaining our status as not having an outbreak in the prison. So perhaps we arrange a call with our health services folks in the next week to
Sure.
just discuss the options.
I would like to be invited to that if possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
The entire board will be.
So once we coordinate that, we'll reach out to you.
Questions or comments? Okay, we'll move on to the contraband update.
Okay, so for the month of July, we had over 8,600 cell searches. We had 188 canine searches, 8 total shakedowns. We had 1 no-notice vehicle search. And to this, well, for July, we only had 1 cell phone found, but that was found during the intake process, a person coming into the institution. So that's a few months now, or a couple months back to back, that we haven't had a cell phone. Actually, since the middle of June, we have not had a cell phone recovered. And when you look at the number of incidents of serious contraband being found, at our height back in March was 18, and back in July, or just last month, 12. So that represents a 33% reduction since we've implemented certain procedures and protocols. We also had our monthly meeting with CID, persons from the prosecutor's office and the drug task force on the 23rd of July. That was a very productive meeting. Overall, you know, I think with our heightened awareness of things, our improved protocols in terms of people coming into the institution and searches, increased level of awareness on inmate movement, we're making some real good progress. And, you know, I'd like to thank, first of all, you know, we did have an incident last week where we had a staff member, unfortunately, get arrested for allegedly bringing in illegal substances into the institution. Yeah, I don't find any joy in that. You know, I'm not here to spike the ball about finding someone, but on the other hand, you have to be held accountable, and that's what our efforts are all about. And you know, we had people coming to our meetings. I'd like to thank Tanner Rouse, who's here tonight. You know, Lori Moore, James Nolan, the Chief of Criminal Investigations, Lieutenant Billy Gordon with CID, Detective Sergeant Anthony Ruggieri, Detective Brian Alexander. That team has been outstanding in supporting us, and we appreciate it. I'd like to throw out a few names from the institution, people who've been working in conjunction with those individuals I just named. Richard Leach, who is the Chief of Security, Keith Hayward, who is our investigations manager, John Burke, who is his assistant, Lieutenant Tyrance Moore, who has been a monster in terms of covering that institution and turning up intelligence, Sergeant Salim Jones, his cohort, Senior Officer Zach Soroti, Senior Officer Alan Dua, who alone, I think, I want to say in the last month, he's turned up more hard contraband than any 6 people in the last 6 months. He's been outstanding. Michael Moore, our classifications manager, and Amanda Herbert, who works for GTL as a technician, who uncovers a lot of intel for us. She's like the glue that holds everything together. So all of those people together, working, meeting monthly, developing information, sharing it back and forth, is, you know, is coming to fruition. Some things, you know, I hate the fact that we have any law enforcement caught up in this type of activity, and I fear that it's not the last one, though. And I only have one thing to say to those who continue to participate in this type of activity. I don't know what you're thinking, but you need to stop. And it's not enough just to stop, you need to quit, right? Because we're not just satisfied with people losing their jobs here. We need them to lose their liberty. So having said that, That's all I have on that subject.
Questions or comments for the warden on the topic?
Warden, just to get a grasp of the increase in searches, and you might not notice off the top of your head, but 3 months ago, 6 months ago, or last June, like how many cell searches were being conducted? Like what kind of increase are we looking
So
at?
the increase is about 300 to 400 more,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
It's always been kind of high, but there's been more of an intensity about it, if you know what I mean. Right?
Mm-hmm. No,
So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, and I just, one of the things is I want to thank you for coming in and the transparency of what's going on, because I think, 18 months ago, when on the jail oversight board, my colleague, Mr. King, talked about the reality of, unfortunately, sometimes staff brings contraband into prisons, and it was almost, publicly lambasted as like, we shouldn't be saying that. And, as we're sitting here tonight, the majority of individuals that work at George W. Hill are good individuals, and nobody, by saying that individuals are bringing in contraband, that's a reality, that's not putting down people that are sacrificing and that they're serving this county. So I think it's real important to have that communication of what reality is, that there are some bad apples and that it's being taken serious and it's not being hidden because of embarrassing everyone or anything else like I feel like it had been before. So I appreciate you putting that out there, and I think it's just so important getting that message out there that it will not be tolerated, and that individuals that, are caught doing that and preying on vulnerable population in the prisons, will be, prosecuted to the full support. And, I think that transparency is very important here at the Jail Oversight Board and into the community, because we've heard so much reports about the contraband crisis at George W. Hill. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I appreciate you pointing out that the overwhelming majority of staff at George W. Hill are outstanding citizens who do a good job, who come to work, carry out their mission. And so we owe them as much as we owe anyone to root out the bad staff. So, they're on board, the good officers, they're law enforcement. If you're not, if you're subject to being compromised, you're not law enforcement. And it's not just George W. Hill. You have bad actors in law enforcement, unfortunately, in just about every field of endeavor, whether it's the cop on the beat or federal law enforcement. I mean, you have people prone to do things the wrong way. And, we need oversight. We need controls. To the extent that we can do that and be transparent, I think it's foolhardy to be embarrassed about finding these things out. We know what's going on. Right? You have to be ahead of it, though. So that's my view.
I'd just like to say, again, I echo Mr. Corson's comments, and I know that this board, especially Mr. Corson and maybe Mr. King, were very pointed at the very beginning of this board coming together about addressing that issue. And maybe one of the silver linings of the COVID experience has been that we learned it couldn't be passed off on families or people coming into the facility, that there were things there and how did they get there. So I really do appreciate the input from the board members and the focus that you're giving this with the people that you listed on this committee. I mean, it's a real team effort to get that moving, and it takes a little bit of time. So I do appreciate that effort.
Yeah, as you said, it really only takes a few bad apples to spoil the bunch and to tarnish the good name of the other corrections officers and other staff there. But from the perspective of the inmates, when you have such a large proportion of them who are in recovery, that those who are being held responsible to work there are those who are, undermining their recovery it's beyond disappointing. It's infuriating. So I appreciate the efforts of the team to root out those bad apples. And we certainly can't spike the football. I think we need to make sure that we get down to zero.
Absolutely.
Anything else on the subject? All right. The next item for today is we invited the district attorney's office to present to us because the jail doesn't operate in a vacuum. I think we have to be understanding of what's taking place within the broader context of criminal justice in Delaware County. And so I've asked Tanner Rouse, the first assistant to the district attorney, to present on that subject.
So,
Tanner?
members of the board, thank you for having me here today. As Councilman Madden alluded to, my name is Tanner Rouse. I'm the first assistant here in Delaware County. And before I begin talking about what I was invited to talk about, I wanted to echo what Warden Tatum had just said. As someone that was a part of those meetings, as someone that has been a part of any number of law enforcement initiatives, I can tell you it can be a territorial business at times, and there are walls that get built up, which can be relatively infuriating, frankly, if you're trying to solve problems of people saying, well, this is us, you can't be here because we're here, et cetera. It has been the opposite of the case in working with Warden Tatum and his staff. I have rarely before met with a group of people that are as committed to information sharing, as committed to collaborating in the name of the greater good. Salim, Keith, Amanda, the names he mentioned, they could not have been more diligent, more harder working, and more clear-eyed about what was going on and about what was needed to solve it. Mr. Corson, Mr. King, you both mentioned we needed to observe the truth of the situation, which was that there were people that worked there bringing in these substances. No one in that room had blinders on. From the moment we walked in, the conversation was absolutely frank about the fact that this was a multi-fold problem, up to and including GO staff members, prison guards, and that we all needed to be aware of that and to work at the heart of that reality before we were going to solve this problem. So the members of this board should know, it's not simply a newspaper article. The reality is that is born fruit of the collaboration and cooperation that we've experienced with that team. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. But Councilman Madden, as I said, you asked me here to talk about some of the things that are going on in the Delaware County justice system as they pertain to the prison population. And I think this is a great opportunity to tell everyone about some of the things we're doing and about how we see, we're optimistic about the impact that can have on our prison population. Forgive me, I'm going to glance down at my notes to make sure I don't miss anything here. But for starters, and it's a shame that Deputy Commissioner Eiserman isn't here because he's been a big part of this, and the many organizations that we work with throughout the county certainly are responsible for this far more than we are. But we've worked with police departments on low-level misdemeanors to issue citations rather than arrests. This was certainly not our idea. This was not something that came up out of thin air. This is a practice that had been in place, but was one that has been escalated and enhanced, particularly during COVID, and it continues on. We are seeing fewer arrests of people that don't necessarily need to be detained. Rather, they're given a citation, they're asked to come to court, they're fingerprinted, et cetera. But we're seeing fewer detentions as far as that goes on low-level offenses, which I think we can all agree is a success. In addition to that, when individuals are arrested and they are given a bail by a magisterial district judge, the public defender's office and my office collaborate twice a week to review that bail amount. And very often, well, I shouldn't say very often, but in instances that, again, twice a week we're going over lists, there are times where we simply feel that with the information that we have, with the additional information that at times we have, that either they're able to garner or we're able to get through criminal intelligence sources or what have you, that oftentimes that bail number is set at a number that is not necessary, that we can let that person out. We've now reviewed over 250 cases of that instance, and we've allowed out or agreed to reduce bail in approximately 140 cases. So we're seeing a real impact on that front, and that's since late April. This is something that is ongoing and happens twice a week, every week, with myself and 2 other deputies in my office, as well as the first assistant public defender and 2 deputies from their office. So it's something that's taking place at the upper echelons and something we're trying to do to make sure that we have the right people in custody, but where information is gathered that says this person maybe doesn't need to be, we're letting them out as quickly as possible. In addition to that, and this is going to sound somewhat silly, but it'll feed into a larger category that I'm going to talk about in just a moment. We're creating files at the district court level. What that means is that we're tracking information on cases as soon as we start prosecuting them. In the past, we simply haven't done a good enough job of that. This office we've been neglect in collecting information, and we've been neglect in collecting that as quickly as possible. I don't say that critically of previous administrations, but it's a simple truth. We have created over 1,200 files in the last couple of months. We therefore know what's going on at these low-level cases and where circumstances change and where we are able to expedite a conclusion. We're able to get that case moving faster and get it resolved quicker and share information more seamlessly. All of that leads to more accurate, more just, and more quick dispositions of cases. And in some instances, that allows people to be released from custody. Not always, but in some instances. We've worked with the judiciary, Her Honor's branch. This was, I'll give all the credit where it's due. This was Judge Kelly's brainchild to create a probationary program where low-level nonviolent offenders that have walked off over 50% of their probationary period are eligible for immediate termination. This is something that we're very excited about. It's still in its nascency. I can't say that we're seeing immediate numbers dropping off as a result of that at this point. However, it's been really exciting working with the people at probation because they are very much of a shared mind, which is these people who we're talking about, again, low-level offenders who have already demonstrated success on probation, don't need what was necessary at the time of their sentence, don't necessarily need to go and continue the sentence where maybe we had it wrong at the outset, right? Just being willing to reassess and say, you know what, this person's doing great, let's cut them a break. That's something we're working on, and we're aggressively expanding with probation, and they've been tremendous partners as far as that goes. We've expanded our diversion programs. What that means is not necessarily at the outset you're going to see someone taken out of custody, but what it means is you're going to see people with either A, faster, or B, more understanding resolutions, which I think in the long run will yield fewer people in custody. An example of that, and really what I mean by that is, in particular, talk about drug treatment court. Drug treatment court is no longer a kind of zero-strike policy. It went from being, people were in drug treatment, they had addiction issues. That was the whole point. And oftentimes, if they got arrested for a possessory case, which is to say they had drugs on them, they were kicked out of drug treatment court and oftentimes found themselves in jail. That is no longer the case. We are, sometimes it is, right? But it is not a policy that is how we're going to operate. Things such as that, shorter probation tails on cases. I've asked my office, in instances where there's a reason why you're giving someone kind of 6 years of probation, fine, understand. But don't do that as a default. Have that as a specific guided reason rather than a blanket assessment. So working with the judiciary to kind of craft sentences of that nature that are a little bit shorter in tail where we can, right? Where we can. The biggest thing, and I think this is kind of where ultimately the rubber will meet the road and where numbers may be greatest impacted, is in preliminary arraignments and in central booking, which are two topics that I've discussed with many people on this panel before. Certainly, Councilman Madden, I know you've dedicated a great number of hours to these topics. But the truth of the matter is, the quicker we are able to glean information, the quicker we are able to diagnose what the case is about, what the person before us, who they are, right, what their background is, et cetera, the quicker the attorneys are involved in that, the quicker we are able to move towards a resolution in every instance, right? I'm not saying that's always going to yield someone getting out of custody. That homicide case is not necessarily changing the custody status of the person while they're awaiting trial. Let me rephrase that. It's not going to change the custody status. But it will move the case along faster because we'll be able to say, okay, this is what we've got, this is what we need, and we'll be able to go to the defense attorney in quicker order and say, here's our hand, you've got to make a call now, here's the offer. And we'll be in a position to make that informed decision. Obviously, that's not true on 100%, but on the overwhelming majority of cases, the system will benefit greatly from that information being shared at the outset of the case rather than at any other time. That is just a simple truth that right now, it isn't happening in this county. And so we're very excited in that. I know the district attorney has built in a line item in our budget to add on an attorney and an arraignment clerk to make that happen. And that's something where, look, the moment that comes to fruition, results will be yielded. It is literally that simple, and that is very often not the case in the criminal justice system, but this is an exception. Where we have people at arraignment making informed decisions, that will yield results immediately. So that combined with central booking, which is obviously a longer-term goal, but it fits the same category, right, of the immediacy of information being shared. The more we can assess what is going on in real time and assess what is going on up front rather than days, weeks, months later, the better able we are going to be to make decisions on that case and get it tracked to one place or another and get it disposed of properly quickly. That yields a lower prison population. It just does. I'm hesitant to put any numbers on that kind of thing, right? On any of this. I can't sit here and give this board an assessment of what that means tangibly. And all of this, I should note, comes under the guise of our first job is public safety. That is first, last, and always. But it is my view and the view of this administration that there are times when public safety is enhanced by letting someone out, right? By allowing that person to keep their job, by allowing that person's life to not be disrupted on a small-scale offense. That isn't always the case, obviously, and I'll tell you right now, we are taking gun crime more seriously than ever before, right? So there is a yin and yang to this in certain respects. But I truly believe that with the implementations we are making and with the changes we hope to see coming in the very near future, that increased information allows us to have more control over that number and to be a little bit more, I think be a little bit more proactive about things.
Thank you, Tanner. Questions, comments from the board?
Yeah, I had a question. Mr. Tanner, so the way I'm understanding it, of course, I know a lot about your program, you guys' program, you're doing a great job. The way I'm understanding it, you're saying indirectly that this program will not only save the county money, but it would actually help decrease recidivism?
So
I don't want to put words in your mouth, I'm just making sure I'm understanding it correctly.
So let me treat those separately. With everything we do, right, the goal is to decrease recidivism. And I think with the programs as we are treating them, as the programs as we are building them, and as as our approach as an administration's approach to criminal justice, I believe, and I certainly hope, but I really believe that we are working on decreasing recidivism, absolutely. That is a goal of ours explicitly. That saves the county money in the long term, right? More people in the workforce, less people in the jail, saves the county money, no question. In terms of the arraignment part of this, and I think that's a little bit separate, right? Because when we talk, Mr. King, about having someone at the beginning of that process, that doesn't necessarily go to the heart of arraignment or of recidivism, specifically, but it does enable us to make faster, more informed decisions, right? So I absolutely believe that will, in the long run, save the county money without question. And I also like to believe that that will have an impact on recidivism, because the sooner you get the right person into the right program, the better chance they've got of getting out of that track. And I think that's a goal of ours, and that's something that will be enhanced.
I understand that. It sounds like a great time issue as well. Like a lot of time will be saved, and that's been the big, I guess, elephant in the room, right? When we're talking about the whole process of the court proceeding, that time is a big deal. But thank you so much. I'm impressed, I must say. I really like the idea of the program that can help in all those facets that need to be addressed. Thank you, sir.
I appreciate it, sir.
Yeah, I'd just like to say as well, it really gives hope for a trajectory where we can make some change, and it will save the county money and save our population from trials and tribulations that may not be necessary. But what I hear is that there's a lot more work maybe in the front end, and also a lot of collaboration and coordination, and that's a shift that is really valuable. But I appreciate the work of everybody, because everything you said are new roles that people didn't do before. Maybe they did some of it, but this focus could really pay off for our citizens, the people that are being arrested, and the justice system too, in being able to handle things as needed and not have things that could be taken care of at the front end. So I really appreciate Mr. Madden asking you to come today. I think it was really helpful to know how this board's trying to connect a lot of different departments and interests in the community and in the county. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. To that end, Madam Commissioner, I just say you're exactly right. At the front end is the biggest nut left to crack. We've worked very hard on it, and at the same time, there's a lot of work and a lot of collaboration left to be done. And I think, fortunately, it's time and again we have found that where we come with ideas, we are met with willing partners, and that has been throughout the criminal justice system. And I want to, again, give credit to the multiple police departments, to the judiciary. Judge Kelly has worked with us every time we've come with an idea. So that's absolutely correct, and I appreciate it.
I just have one follow-up, just in terms of the police department, so that component has a input into this process as well. So they're not doing their work and then being, well, we didn't need you to do that. I mean, they're doing their jobs and they're part of this whole process.
Absolutely. Before I even broach this topic of kind of a preliminary arraignment process with His Honor, I reached out to multiple police chiefs just to make sure that they were in agreement that this is something that can work here and that this is something that they would support. And I received unanimous feedback that they would. It is, again, I don't think anyone's against making better informed decisions faster, right? When it comes down to it, that's a pretty easy sell. And so I think we've found a pretty willing audience everywhere we've gone.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you for coming out tonight and sharing that with us. I think the collaboration, the communication between what you guys, your office is doing is so important as we have the opportunity to create new programs inside George W. Hill that focus on substance use, treatment, recovery, reentry, and to really partner of what's going on outside so we can really have that warm handoff and that link up. So I thank you for coming out and look forward to continuing to collaborate. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, my comment is very brief. I agree with everything you said, Tanner.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're
I will count that as a win.
And I appreciate that you're being realistic about things, too.
Of course. Yeah.
I appreciate your coming in today, Tanner. And as you said, a lot of the things that you're doing and the district attorney's office is doing under DA Stolzheimer, they're not the most headline grabbing. A lot of it's really just the coordination amongst an inherently adversarial system. And I will echo the appreciation to the judiciary, to President Judge Kelly and Judge Brennan and the rest of the bench. It's really been a process where folks just look at opportunities to do better, and it all really results in impacting people's lives in ways that don't always seem obvious, but are very, very significant to process them through the criminal justice system in a way that's fair, that's safe to the community, and ultimately is most efficient for the county. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Very nice to see you.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
All right, the next item for tonight is the deprivatization update. Mr. Al-Sayeh, our consultant from Malta.
Good afternoon, members of the board, members of the public. This past month, we've been very much focused on the RFPs that are out on the street. We've been getting pages and pages of questions on medical, maintenance, food service, commissary. A lot of interest in these RFPs, working closely with Warden Tatum on gathering responses to these questions so that we get informed bids. So we feel pretty positive about the interest in these RFPs. In addition, been continuing to look at some of the neighboring counties and how they manage some of these services, as well as how they manage their IT. Tanner Rouse talked about information and how they want to collect information early and work with, there's a lot of information within the prison IT system that needs to be shared with others, and we are mapping that out, working with the county IT department, Frank Bellotta, Lisa Rydell, to kind of look at how information is captured now, how it's shared, and how it can be, how that can be improved, that process can be improved. Frank Bellotta, Lisa Rydell, and I visited the Bucks County Prison this morning. We had a very good visit looking at all of their operations, but really focused on IT and those processes. And there were some excellent takeaways from that. There's, I think, great opportunity for Bucks, Montgomery, Chester, Delaware County to kind of share best practices in this area. I think there's some low-hanging fruit in the IT area that will be able to be put in effect, regardless of what happens with the prison contract and GEO, that will help improve operations. So we're looking at how that can be put in place. So that's my brief report today.
Questions?
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Love.
You just referenced IT, so I have a list of questions here, but I think it was August 4th, the last county council meeting. There was a big discussion regarding increasing expenditures on IT, which supports what you just said. I don't recall that additional cost to improve the IT was also part of the transition. So are we traveling down two separate paths? One is the potential transition back to the county as in addition to upgrading the IT, as opposed to if we don't transition back to the county, will there still be the upgrades to IT? If you could talk those out for me, I'd appreciate it.
I think we, kind of in sync with what Mr. Tanner Rouse just spoke of, the district attorney and public defender can't do their roles 100% without having a better functioning IT system within the prison, without having data that's actually fed into the system, captured, and can be sought after and given to them in reports on a daily basis. So the improvement of the IT infrastructure, I would recommend to the county, needs to happen regardless, which is why this due diligence is being done. It will help improve operations. As you know, in any business, whether it's a hospital, private business, improved IT infrastructure can improve overall productivity and operations.
Sure. Totally agree, absolutely. But I just want to be sure there are two different paths we're looking at.
Well, and the RFPs for medical maintenance and all of these, those are being done on the assumption that there will be a vote, and if the vote happens to deprivatize the prison, those will be well on their way to becoming under contract and be able to be brought under county operations.
Got it, thank you.
But at the same time, as those RFPs come in, it'll help bear out the financial report that was done so we can know that we're within some parameters of what was projected to be the cost.
We will have real costs from those RFPs.
And IT
correct.
was part of that stuff. I mean, there was IT built into that.
There was IT in the original estimate as well.
Right.
Yeah, just to follow on that point by our controller, and this is kind of reiterating what I've said the last 2 months, but I think it's important for the public to understand. I mean, it may not seem like a lot is going on with the deprivatization process. There is a lot going on behind the scenes, and a big part of it is this RFP process. There is, by nature of it, a waiting period. You need to give the street, so to speak, time to respond to the RFP, to ask questions, to submit their bids. But it's a very significant and very important part of the process to get to a point where this oversight board can make an informed decision about deprivatizing. That you're de-risking this process when you're taking major parts of the management of the prison, such as medical and such as food services and maintenance, and you have an understanding of what that cost will be outside of the contract. It reduces the overall, bite that you're making to turn the thing completely off of the GEO contract. So this is an important step in the process, and it allows for this board to make a more informed decision about the cost.
That's correct, Mr. Madden. And obviously our visits to Bucks County and Montgomery County, Chester County, and talking to them about their contracts with these providers gives us a benchmark. We're not doing this just in a vacuum in Delaware County. We're looking at what all the neighboring counties are doing for the same services.
I would also say that Mr. Alsea and Lisa Rydell and Frank Bellata had met with the people in my office to keep honing in on sort of back of the house financial operations and how we do things and what information they need to glean from GEO. And we appreciated that meeting and being able to go through that, because it's a process, and we're trying to vet out what would be needed, and we're working with you on that.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
Any other questions for Mr. Alsea?
Are there any, have there been others, or are there any thoughts to send out any RFPs for other services? Or are we limiting it to food and healthcare? Because that's all I've heard, but yes.
Medical maintenance, food service, commissary. And we are looking at HR support. If the county decides to take over the prison, it's our recommendation that the county hires most of the existing staff. And the county doesn't have the HR staff to be able to process 400-plus people. And so that will be an intense, several-month process to evaluate, make offers, look at benefits, benefits package, look at salary scales. I mean, I think we're recommending that correctional officers have entry pay scales that are better than they're being paid now. We will have an HR firm possibly advising the county on that, given that it's a lot of intense effort over a short period of time.
I recall, I believe it was our April meeting where we discussed, when we were really looking line by line at your assessment, that there would probably be an HR firm hired at least in the beginning just to process quickly a large number of employees. So that's still in your path?
Yes, it is.
That's
And
in addition to
in addition to the
hiring.
others. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we did have a budget item in there for HR.
Yeah, I kind of remembered that.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the impact, and I know it made front page news this week, but what's the impact of bringing the prison back to the county and us developing our own health department kind of at the same time, because we're no longer going to have an established health department? So do you foresee any issues, problems, just because of the early origins of our own health department?
Can you clarify the question? I mean, we don't have an
Sure.
established health department today.
I'm sorry?
We don't have a health department today.
Right. But we will, I mean, it's defined to be soon, and they may happen at the same time. So we have a young, the thought is a young health department with the potential of having a young ownership, retaking back the prison. So and then there's the health. So I'm
There's
just
the health
looking at these
expertise
two-
there that's needed.
Yes,
Right.
I'm looking at the two very large, costly entities that have the potential of landing at the starting line together.
Yeah,
And I'm very curious and concerned. I have some concern about that.
I hear you. Warden Tatum will tell you that in order to have a good service by a contracted entity, you need a good contract, you need a good vendor, you need a good contract, and you need a good contract administrator. So you need all three of those to have a good service. So one of the positions in the new organization for the staffing positions for the prison will be an operations manager that manages the medical contract, manages the commissary contract, manages the, and it's a good bit, it would be someone with good business skills, not necessarily someone from corrections, but it's someone that, a good financial and operations manager that's able to hold the vendors' feet to the fire when they need to be held to the fire and keep them accountable. Every contract will have performance criteria that they need to meet, and it'll be up to that operations manager to make sure that those are met. There will be a need at times to reach out for outside medical support. We'll help the county figure out how to do that in the interim until their health department is up and running.
I don't want to monopolize this, but I do have a couple other questions. So if other board members want to jump in, I'll take a rest. Oh, okay. So I don't recall, and I tried to review the material that we had received, I guess, in April, May, regarding the processes and the various options and the cost associated with each of the types of transitions. I don't recall what would be happening for, I would say, long-term capital expenditures. Is that coming right from the county? Is that part of this, or is the county going to take responsibility for that, or are we going to come up with our own HOA funds for the jail?
Good question. So what we learned when we looked at the prison was that there are are a number of aspects of the prison that are in disrepair. The roof in many places, the kitchen, the electronic security system is antiquated, needs to be replaced. And the cost estimate, if I recall from the report, was around $14 million that would be needed to be expended to really fix and update and upgrade those systems. The prison is, what is it, 24 years old, 25 years old, roughly. Some of those are the original bricks and mortar parts of the prison, and it is time for them to be upgraded. Whether GEO remains or does not, that work needs to be done. I know GEO offered to do it, and 0% interest. I don't think there's any incentive for the county to take them up on that offer, and that there's no guarantee that the work would be done at cost. It would be done by GEO and then presented to the county. I think it's in the county's interest to do the work itself.
We're going to agree to disagree on that, but that's not what I'm going to debate with you. The last question I have is, and I praise you for looking at our neighboring counties and how they deliver care, service in their prisons. It's been in the news that everybody, even those like in Bucks that have a higher salary, are having issues hiring and retaining employees. Do you have some magic bullet that you think by us merely raising salaries in a potential future offer is going to be different than the problems that our neighboring jails are having with retaining staff, even at a higher hourly rate?
You're absolutely correct. Everyone in the region is experiencing difficulty in finding and hiring, especially entry-level staff. That is a challenge for the region. And I think in the prison world there are no magic bullets. But what I can suggest is that GEO's current staffing level at 78%, I think Warden Tatum said.
Real 79 right now.
79. Is because they are paying $6 an hour lower than any of the neighboring counties. There's a direct correlation to that. They are not experiencing the same level of turnover. They're not experiencing the same, they are finding people. This morning they told us, they said, when they're getting 50 applicants, now they're getting 20. And obviously out of 20, they might hire 4 because the others don't meet expectations. But they're getting college graduates that want to come and be correctional officers, that have degrees in criminal justice, that have degrees in psychology. And they're getting young people who really want to devote their lives to actually serving the public in a manner that helps the community.
Thank you, but you do agree, we all have staffing issues.
It's a problem everyone faces.
Yeah, it's a problem everywhere, and in my opinion, paying people closer to market and having more focus on reducing the turnover rates that GEO currently has will, help us to address this challenge.
Yeah. And something I learned today that I was not aware of from Bucks County, we talked about recidivism and reentry and some of the things they're doing there. They said they have job fairs at the prison for residents who are leaving prison back to their lives. And the last job fair, they had 12 companies show up, Walmart and others, that are interviewing residents who are about to be released and giving some of them jobs, getting them a job right out of prison, which is something that I would encourage Delaware County to think about and to consider.
Thank you.
Disagree right there.
I just have one question. On the capital, when the GEO contract, those are the county's responsibilities ultimately anyway. Right?
Regardless.
It's just a matter of how it's paid for.
Right.
And I have to say that in looking at that contract that was entered into, I guess, at the end of 2018, it was really kicked down the road what was going to happen with those repairs. These things are not, many of these things are not new problems.
Right.
HVAC, the roof,
Right.
that's not new. So these were going to be county responsibilities at one way or the other. And it's too bad it wasn't taken care of in that contract, but I didn't see that it was. So I think we're going to have to just try and take care of these things one way or the other, whether there's a geo contract in place or not. It's going to be something that has to be addressed.
Correct. Something that the maintenance provider at Bucks County as well, they hire some of the low-level residents who are on, able to work, that can work within the prison. They have them doing renovations and construction in the prison to teach them construction skills. So they've got a lot of good efforts there that actually help support the population in terms of reentry and job training. So we're learning good things.
I had a question, Mr. Flair.
Yes, Mr. King.
If my memory serves me right, I believe there was a position in the transition process for a person to be an operational / like liaison. I talk about this a lot, and one of the reasons I talk about it is because not only the county prison, the Department of Corrections, it's like the way they operate inside of prisons from my experience in life, right? Just knowing people that work there and all these other things. It seems like nobody's never watching the store, right? We need somebody to watch the store. I've talked about this liaison thing for a long time, and we didn't get here yesterday. It's been like this for a very long time. I really appreciate and respect the fact that you're talking about these operational managers and management to look at things like the commissary, and these other things, so someone can be accountable for the things that happens actually inside the prison that the world, right, like the outside world never really knows about. And I'm really concerned about someone always having a connection from in the county to that prison. Warden Tatum, I must say, he is doing an excellent job. I mean, this man is everywhere, and I know he has a lot of pressure on him from both sides, right? But we still don't have he's in that office, right? And that prison is being operated and ran by people, and we need to have someone to be able to authentically, right, and with integrity, to start giving us some real-time information to make sure that our prison in this county never operate under this kind of condition again. And that's just my personal opinion in reference to what I see and what I've learned over my little bit of 56 years on this earth. I think that would make a difference. And I like the part that you brought up about coming from different cultures. The recidivism rate, one of the reasons of it being like that, and to stay on just that subject, is that when people come out of prison from different kind of communities and they go right back to the same community, you can expect the recidivism rate to be high, along with not getting any programming or any help or any addiction counseling and all of those kind of things while you're in there. You're just adding fuel to the fire. So I'm really, as a board member, I'm really concerned about someone always having information, real-time information, from the prison to the outside world. I think that will make a world of difference, whether we like the information or not.
Thank you, Mr. King. We'll certainly take that under advisement and keep that in mind as the process moves forward.
Any other questions for Mr. Alsayer? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other subcommittee reports for today?
On the MAT expansion subcommittee, in talking to Crozier, they're actively looking to staff the new Suboxone program. And it looks like they said it's anywhere from a 6 to 8 week turnaround period for that to happen on their end. So that's the update that I've had for that expansion of that program.
Excellent. So by next month, we should be pretty close to getting it fully staffed.
I'll keep reaching out to them, and I'll definitely have more information, but that's the goal.
Great. All right, anything else? All right, Mr. Tatum.
Okay. Current population as of today, 1492. Total commitments, as I said earlier, in July were 569, and discharges were 529, a recidivism rate of 64%. The only major or significant incident of note I already mentioned earlier about the officer being arrested. In terms of our GTL visiting update, last month we had 412 video visits scheduled, and to date that's over 4,600 done free of charge. We had 425 on-site visits in July, which is pretty significant given that we just started in a small way in visiting. Behavioral health update, we had 2 persons on the waiting list for Norristown State Hospital, and the drug and alcohol liaisons discharged 72 residents to inpatient treatment last month. In terms of our program achievements last month, we have 4 GEDs attained, which brings us to 19 to this point of the year. And I might add that, to this point this year, we administered 155 GED tests, right, for a 51% pass rate. Now, that's a lot of tests, and that doesn't mean that all those people were testing to obtain their GED. It means that they were testing some part of the GED program. Right? So they're pretty active in the education department. We had 72 adult basic education participants. That's up from 42 last month or the month before. The intermediate unit teachers are on hiatus for the summer. Flag training, we have 9 participants. Workplace essentials, which is computer literacy, we have 20 participants. And we had overall participants in educational programs, 152 for the month of July. Treatment programs, we had 66 inmates enrolled in Prep 1, 15 in Prep 2. Anger management, we had 21 for males and 7 for females. Sex offender program had 7. House of Healing, 3 males. Parenting, 2 males. And none in the transgender group last month. There was a new program started last month. It was a Delaware County Women Against Rape program, and so we had 33 participants in that group last month, which was a good start. The facility passed its PREA audit, that's a Prison Rape Elimination Act audit. They did that successfully. And I passed out the standards for PREA compliance. I sent it to all of the report for that audit will come out within 45 days of the actual audit, so we're looking at probably another 30 days. Maintenance update, we've been fortunate over the last month or week or two with the temperatures, so we haven't had a lot of HVAC issues. I see that they're going to be coming. Today started, I guess, the beginning of a heat wave. Fortunately, we got the compressor back for Unit 6, B, and C, and that should be delivered and hopefully in play tomorrow evening. So that's just in time. Also, we received at least 2 quotes. We're looking at establishing or reestablishing a public address program, a public address system within the institution, strategically placing speakers throughout the facility so that we can control our movement better. Our initial estimate, there was just over, I think, $120,000, and the most recent one was over 40. And so we're going to contrast and compare those two and see what we get from them, okay? And that's all I have to this point.
Any questions for the warden?
Warden, the new program being facilitated by Delaware County Women Against Rape. Is that an ongoing
For
8-week
8 weeks,
session?
8 weeks.
Or, okay, and then does it start again, or?
It can, it depends on how it works this first
Okay.
8 weeks.
And grant specific, is it something that will be available to the male population as it continues forward?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay,
I'd have to look into that.
okay, all right.
Anyone else?
Any other questions? Thank you, Warden. All right, I do have one additional item to add to the agenda before we get to public comment. It occurs to us that we do not currently have a vice chair, and it's probably something we ought to have. So I will make a motion to amend the agenda to appoint a vice chair. Right, motion is second.
Second.
All right. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, and then for that appointment, I will make a motion to appoint our controller, Joanne Phillips, to be the vice chair. Is there a second to that motion?
Second that motion.
All right, motion is second. Any questions or comments? I will also, just given the fact that this is in addition to the agenda, if there's any comments from the public, any questions or comments, I'd invite them. Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, congratulations, Controller. I know you're looking for more things more hats to wear, so thank you for that.
Smiling under here. I am, actually. There's no other choice.
We are at public comment. Anything from the public today?
Hello, Mary Austin, 1036 First Avenue, Media, PA, 19063. I'm sorry I wasn't here if they addressed it earlier. I did know that there were juvenile detainees. Are they still being detained at the prison?
Warden, do you have a number?
Do you know how many?
I want to say 14.
And do you know how long they've been there?
I'd have to look at the individual cases, but it's a pretty long time.
Also, I noticed in the April minutes, there was mention of a medical RFP again in July. The same comment that the RFPs were being responded to and there were questions, and we have the same comment again this month. So I'm just, concerns me that there's been no progress, and there's been, almost 4 months. So as a citizen, I'm concerned about that, and I wanted to bring that to your attention.
Sure, we addressed it in the deprivatization update, where we stand on the RFP process. And Mr. Alsay, remind me, we put the RFP out, when did it actually hit the street?
It says in the April minutes that they were being prepared.
Being prepared, but it actually went out on the street in June. There were questions that were responded to. We've actually received the medical RFP, putting together the committee that will review them. And we're hoping to make a recommendation by the end of August. The medical RFP is something like 30 pages. The responses are 100 to 200 pages long. These are very detailed.
Yeah, I can
I mean, I
appreciate
understand
that for
but
those who aren't involved, it may, without seeing the activity, it may feel like there's not a whole lot going on.
I'm
But
familiar with RFPs and,
Sure.
and the process. I know it may seem like I'm a citizen, but I also been in the nonprofit industry, so I understand the process. I'm just concerned that we've been talking about the same RFPs since April, and that with a team of people and, 30 days in a month, we should be a lot further than this. So,
If you look at the neighboring counties, what they took that to do their medical RFP, 9 to 12 months in every county. We're actually doing it in a much shorter time frame. Very much.
we didn't have one to build off of either. This is totally new. So I think in April, it was referenced that it was being prepared and then approved and went out. And you can track it on the county website too, under the central purchasing. I go there periodically to look at myself to see the dates when things are due. So there is some information there that might be at least helpful. But I hear what you're saying, but I think they're really going in as fast as it can be done.
The issue is if you speed one of these things up, it undermines the integrity of it. And we want to make sure that those who may be opposed to this process feel that every effort was made to make sure it was fair.
And so, is it typical to have the number of juveniles in the county prison for an undisclosed amount of time?
There is no juvenile facility in Delaware County. And so there are requirements in housing them that we comply with. For instance, it can't be within sight or hearing of adults other than staff members.
Yeah, but Mr. Taylor, just to be clear, the juveniles that are being held at George W. Hill are not there because of the fact that the Lima Detention Center is closed. That's a completely separate issue.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What
Okay.
I'm saying is, yes, they are charged with adult offenses.
Right.
And that's why they're housed here, but there is no facility for juveniles who committed adult offenses in Delaware County, right?
Understood.
So
Yeah.
that's why they are where they are.
Okay, but is that the policy to have juveniles in George Hill?
It's, you know, it is not optimal. I mean, I would rather not have juveniles at the facility, really, but it takes a lot more attention to make sure that you meet all the requirements and guidelines to meet their needs. You know, that's not the reason I don't want them there, but it does, you know, you are concerned sometimes about the operation there, and they're separated away from everyone else.
So
Yeah, and-
how are they separated?
They're in a unit that is basically a 16-cell unit, which is more secure, and no one can get in and off unless they're a staff member.
And to be clear, the idea of incarcerating juveniles as adults is not to the purview of the Jail Oversight Board. That's per state law. That's to the discretion of the judiciary system. We are responsible for making sure that there is a secure unit within the jail for juveniles. But beyond that, the fact that there are 14 or whatever there are, that this Oversight Board has literally zero input on that.
Okay, I just wanted to get information
Sure,
about that
of
so
course.
the public's aware.
The jail, the last visit, we did visit that unit, and Mr. King led also a visit to there was one female,
Yeah.
and she was specially visited as well by a
Yes,
part of the board.
I actually visited the juvenile section. All of them were okay. I even had the opportunity to visit the one female juvenile that was there. I was accompanied with a female officer and one of my board members, and she was okay as well. So I checked on them personally myself. I went to every single cell, and I didn't go look at the cell. I looked inside the cell and actually saw every person. No one had any complaints or any concerns. Neither did the female. The one female that they had sectioned off away from everyone. From my understanding, from what I saw, they were all well.
Any other comments from the public? All right. Anything else from members of the board? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion. Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you all.